Bien, bonjour à tous. Juste avant de commencer cette conférence, sachez que la...
So just before we start, the first part will be in French and then we will switch to English. So if you need a headset, you can pick them up at the entrance to the Agora. And we have interpreters in the booth who will be translating everything we say in both directions. Thank you all for being present today. We're going to be talking mainly about business models for 5 or 6 minutes, and then a topic that's dear to my heart, which is governance of tourist destinations. Sometimes I have technical issues with the pointer, but hopefully it will work. Now, to start, in the world, there are 3 models to manage mountain tourist destinations, and one is what we call concentrated, one is broken up, and one is federated. So the concentrated model means that you have in the same hands owners, sometimes private owners, sometimes public entities. In the same hands you have the financing tools, all of the political decision-making tools for the development policy, and the management by the operators of accommodations, lifts, sports shops, souvenir shops, restaurants, ski schools, etc. That can be a public or semi-public entity or a completely private entity. It can be individuals. Just to give you an example, Robert Redford, the American actor, for years owned the Sundance ski resort, and he just sold it before lockdown 2 years ago. So when you go to sleep in Sundance, you could say that you slept in Robert Redford's bed, and not everybody can say that. So, all jokes aside, this concentrated model, often they have shops on a concession basis and restaurants as well, and there are some exceptions when a portion of the resort is located in a regional or national park, because in those cases the authorities, the park authorities, can intervene in the decision-making. So what are some of the drawbacks of the concentrated model? Well, the risk-taking is very heavy and it's borne by a single player. But on the other hand, the profits are in the pocket of a single actor. So it's a very autocratic type of operation, which raises questions in terms of growth or local initiatives. There's not much space for local initiative. I see that some of you are taking these slides, taking photos of these slides. They are on slideshare.net/Armelle. It's a presentation that's even more detailed than the one that I'm showing you here. A big advantage of this type of model that we mainly find in North America, New Zealand, and South America is simply the fact that the policy, the common policy that's been adopted, is usually can be implemented very rapidly with very little friction and conflict, contrary to other models that we might find in Europe. So decision-making is rapid, execution is also very fluid, and so the results are quite significant. The second model is what we call the scattered model or broken up model that we see in Australia and Southern Europe, where you'll have a huge amount of public, semi-public, and private entities in several layers. Tourist offices, town halls, all the accommodation owners, restaurant owners, all of these people are completely non-coordinated. This leads to an organization that is quite complex, but the advantage is that they share the risks, they share the charges, expenditures, and also they share the profits. It also has a big advantage in terms of taking into account local specificities and the local population. the drawback is that it's very difficult to adopt a common strategy and to take decisions and then implement them. Sometimes it's completely impossible. So here's a little diagram that was drawn up in 2019 where you can see that for French resorts, depending on the different topic, it shows you the entities that intervene. If you look at the subject of marketing the destination, you have the tourist office, the groups of municipalities, tour operators, travel agents, etc. And those are a lot of people that have to agree for a single strategy in one direction. And sometimes it's quasi-impossible if you have complex figures. So for the federated model, which is the last model that I'll be describing today, you mainly find in Europe, our two guests will be telling you more, we have concerted management, participatory management, and coordinated among all of the stakeholders of the resort. So it's easier to fight against this centrifugal force that you see in open systems. What's quite interesting is that there's real co-building of the strategy and the policy that's adopted, and often a form of collective pressure, which means that everyone implements these collective decisions. And that's quite interesting. Often you see that there are associations or semi-public entities, sometimes private, but it's more rare, to manage how this model operates. So what are the drawbacks? Well, many conditions have to be met, and we will discuss this with our two guests. Many conditions have to be brought together for the governance to be able to work well, but we do have the advantages, which are concerted decision-making and rapid execution, sharing the risks, sharing the charges, and sharing the profits, and also taking into account the local populations. So before we talk about governance, I'd like to recall two things. This is an equation that's mathematically false, but it's true in reality. A half decision, or no decision at all, equals a total mess, a total squared mess when no decisions are taken. So that's a real guaranteed result. And the second preamble I'd like to share with you is created by Olivier Bas, is the theory of the triple CON, which is when we do concessions and we hope to reach a consensus, in the end we only produce confusion. And that's not always easy to translate the play on words into English. But in terms of governance, this is essential to understand that when you don't take a decision, this leads to situations that can often be dramatic. I'm talking about governance, and you'll say, well, what do we mean by governance? I showed you two definitions here. Intermediate forms of regulation, which are not merchant or state forms, and that connect private interests with public interests, social aspects, and economic aspects. That's the definition from 1992. I think in 2022, we could also associate the environmental interests. And Le Gallès has another definition in 95, focusing on the notion of relationships. He said it's a group of arrangements and formal and informal relationships between public and private interests based on which decisions are taken and implemented. So what is governance? It's a group of people who are serving a territorial project. And upstream, that means you have to have defined and co-built this territorial project. Emmanuelle Georges, who maybe you saw this morning at another round table, she talks a lot about a term that I think is very strong, which is the notion of public guidance and cooperation among actors from the public and the private sectors. So what are the challenges linked to governance? The first is really to reinforce transparency within the collective group, to make sure that there's a balance of power between the different structures, and that the actors in a destination are sharing responsibility among the different structures. It also facilitates and boosts everyone's involvement, and we know that it's difficult to bring everyone around a project, and it means that everyone really buys into a project. It also allows you to encourage consistency in the territory that's involved. And the main objective is to implement the strategy and action plans defined and co-built collectively. So very rapidly now, I didn't want to spend much time in my introduction because I know I don't want to be a consultant who bores everybody. So I would like to ask our guests some questions. I hope I pronounced your names properly.
Sorry about the pronunciation of your name. Berno, just a quick question. You left Grenoble in Switzerland. So for people who doesn't know where Grenoble is, it's just right behind Verbier, if I'm correct. So you left for a new professional adventure a few months ago. Can you just describe and present Grenoble in a few seconds?
Yes, Grenoble is a little resort, about 10,000 beds near Zermatt, and it's on very high, 1,600 meters high. But we have a special climate there because it's very dry. It's the driest region in Switzerland, so we have not a lot of precipitation, and we had also, as we heard before in the masterclass before, technical snow is very important in Grenoble. And we have Zermatt behind, we have Saas-Fee behind, we have Verbier, so we have a lot of big resorts, big areas around, and we had to find a solution how we could survive finally. And that was the starting point of our adventure in Grenoble. I started in Grenoble in 2008, and I was the head of this resort for 12 years. And I ended there not because I didn't like or I came to the end, because I was 50 years old and I need a new challenge. And now I'm the director of the Swiss Cable Car Association.
All right. So you, as an event, you said that in 2008 you started the governance of Grenoble. Can you just explain the context and what triggered this creation?
Yeah, you showed different models before, and I think it's quite difficult to change these models. You need a trigger, and also you need suffering. You need suffering to change something only because of a good idea, to change something, or new philosophy, or a new director. I think it's not worth to change the whole thing. You need more. And we really had a situation in Grenoble in 2008, 2009 that first the cable cars had to invest a lot because all the two main cable cars came to the end, and we had to rebuild them, so we needed money. The municipality was in debt, very much in debt, and they had a problem with the parking. They had to rebuild the parking, but they could not invest in the cable cars. And everything, we had a kind of this model éclaté, where everyone tried to do their best, but not in a harmonious way, not in a federal way. And I think that was the topic. And then there was only one, and we didn't have a rich man, a rich Swiss, we didn't have a rich bank, Switzerland, to give money. So we had to say, okay, when we won't have a chance, we have to do it together. The only way is we have to do it together. And I think that was a crucial point, that everyone had to see, okay, we have only a chance if we're really federating the whole system, the whole partial companies there, and we had to bring them together and then restart really on a very clear politics and a very clear strategy, the whole resort. And I think that was the starting point was that we were really in a situation, we had no two chances, we had only one chance, that was one chance, go together through the situations. And you know, we had the Euro crisis in 2010, so we had really a lot of crises in Switzerland in this period. So it was really the last chance, I think, was for Grenoble to build this construction, to build this new form of organization to go through.
All right, so you worked over 12 years or almost 13 years, if I'm correct. How did you conduct the transition of your business model, and what results did you achieve just before you left?
I think at the beginning is important. I think that is key. You had to build trust. I think trust is key for me in such an organization. And we didn't start to build a model and then, okay, this is the organization from top down. Okay, now we will apply what the mayor of the municipality or the president of the cable car said. No, not this way. We started with different commissions. We have commissions of infrastructure, a commission of marketing, and a commission of communication. So we integrated all people who are really engaged in this new phase. And then with a new director, I was coming to Grenoble in 2010, and then we had one task to build trust in 2 years, that in 2 years we can build a new company. And the new company must be built really, they must be shared by everyone. Everyone had to say, okay, now we will want it. And I think that was a very important point, that at first we will not come and bring kind from abroad a new system. So we will build the system, the new form, together with the people who are there, with different commission. And with this commission we said also, it's very complicated. There were 20 people engaged in this period. We can't live, you can't build up an organization with 20 people. So we must be structured in another way afterwards. And this was the first period. So in 2010 afterwards, we started with the new organization. The new organization was directed with the Cable Car Association. So we widened the purpose of the Cable Car Association, but this was the most important. Then we had a mandate with a mandate of service with the Tourist Association in there. So with this mandate of service, so we could also manage all the tourism. And 3 years afterwards, we purchased also every restaurant in the mountain. So we have really now the restaurant in the mountains, then the tourist office, and also the cable cars in the first phase. Afterwards, we had only we integrated also an event agency. We integrated an agency of locations of apartments and so on.
But we have, I think we have a slide right there to present. Sorry about that. There you go. Maybe you could describe the functioning of the governance of Grenoble.
Yes.
Would you like to stand up?
That's okay. On the top, you have this table ronde. This table ronde is that's a bit typical Swiss thing. That's the parliament, the tourist parliament of the resort. So every association which is organized could be part of this parliament. This parliament was met us twice a year, and we also made journeys, study journeys, and other resorts and so on. So this is very, very important. The head of this table ronde is the mayor. So the president of the municipality is the head, and he invited twice a year. And every strategy, when we have new strategy phase, when we have new projects, it is discussed there. Important, they have no competency to decide, but informally they decide. If we had projects there, presented there, where they say, oh, it's not for us, you cannot do that, okay, we have to change. So we were forced to change. So this table round is very important, that we can, everything what we do, the big directions that we have, they were shared by every association, by every touristic association. And then we have a board, and we have the company with a board, and this is very small. So we have 5 persons there. Very important, the president, until now, the president is not from the region. It's not from the region, it's from abroad. Why? Because we want that the governance is very professional, it's very economic also, and that must be a person from abroad. And then we have the main stakeholders in the board, that is the municipality and the tourist association on the board, and the rest is also 2 persons from abroad also. it was very important that we have not only the stakeholders in the board, but also the competency. So we wanted economic competency, we wanted competence of law really in this board. That was very important for us. And then down you have the direction where we don't see now, okay, is it cable car, is it gastronomy? Yes, restoration you have here, but is it cable car, is it tourism association? You don't see. We are fully integrated afterwards on the operational level. That's the organization.
Well, thank you. Olve, to help the audience understand the context, can you rapidly present Trysil, please?
Yes, I will. Thank you for having me here. Trysil is today the largest ski resort of Norway. We have about 1.1 million skier days per year and like roughly 32,000 beds around the mountain. The history of the skiing in Trysil started about 50 years ago in the 60s, where the landowners decided to come together into a group of 13 of them, mostly private owners, but also the municipality had some public land. They formed this organization that started it all. They agreed pretty quickly that we need to work together to be able to grow our destination. And that has been a huge success. In 2005, we sold the Alpine ski lift system to SkiStar. So we're one of the 5 SkiStar destinations now. And, but this also funded the foundation of creating a destination marketing organization. So in the destination marketing organization, we have roughly 200 members. These are private members, everything from the SkiStar, other activity providers, restaurants and hotels and so on. And we work together in this organization, not only with marketing but also with other activities and competence development. So we have had a really good growth. The winter business has been growing immensely since 1966 with 1.1 million skier days. It's a huge business. What we saw is that the summer activities and the summer visits to our destination was kind of stable. Didn't move yet, much the last 20 years. So we had to come up with a new strategy and to try to close the gap between the summer business and the winter business. We have been trying all sorts of things with activities, small activities, but to create the reason to go to Trysil also in the summer, we ended up with mountain biking. And that's my role in the destination company, is to lead the project of developing the mountain biking. And now this has also changed a lot for the destination. Of course, this is important to keep the competent people working for you and also to generate positive cash flow throughout 12 months of the year.
What are the topics that are handled in the framework of this governance? And by the way, do you have topics that are excluded? Well, no, we do. The main topic is marketing and also to coordinate all the activities that's happening on the destination. So we have divided into branches as well. So we talk about events and happenings. We have a branch with the restaurants. We have a branch with accommodation and also competence. Sustainability is, of course, important here as it's everywhere else at the moment, and also product development. All right. What challenges concerning the business model transition did you overcome thanks to this structure, this governance in Trysil? We have, the members are put into different categories, and they pay now a percentage of the turnover. So you could say roughly 1.5% of the turnover is paid directly back to the DMO. And it changed a little bit on the categories, how much tourism you have of your total turnover in the company.
But we work really well together, and that brings in about 1.5 million euros per year. That we do marketing and we do this competence and all the information around the destination and also these projects like the mountain bike project.
So the question is for both of you guys. In your opinion, what are the best practices but also the mistake to avoid when you want to have a successful governance?
There are a lot of mistakes to avoid, and the success is the result of the work you have. But I think what's important here is also when you're in a destination to have also the look from abroad. So I was not born in Grenoble. I didn't live there, and it's very good that you are involved, but you keep a good distance. I think that's very important. I think, and you had also to be aware that partial interests were not dominating or were not coming back. And I see a lot in every resort, in every area, there are a lot of partial interests. Heritage of the first model you have is always playing, and I think that's a mistake you have to be. So you have to be really a good distance, but doing good job, being involved, be engaged, but really with a good distance. And I think what I did is I always analyzed the game. Where we are, in which situation we are, and what also my role. And who are the actors who are playing the game now. And I think this is very important, and that could change. Huh? Also in the period, that could change. People were not happy, people were not successful, we had political problems and so on. And you have to see, okay, who are the people you have really to do with, so who are positive, have a lot of energy, so you can deal with, and you can communicate, you can go forward. And who were maybe the people who had a misunderstanding or who could not follow you, and so that they can follow you, and also to look in these changes, who are the people who don't follow you, and you have to observe them. Who don't follow you, who are not happy with them. Not everyone is happy. So if you want to see, okay, this compromise is les trois cons. So je suis très d'accord. So who are people who can't follow you, and these people you have two categories. You have one category, maybe you can change them once, and there's a category you can't change them. So they are disappointed. They want to sell. They have enough. And I think also these people, if you observe them and tell what they to do, that's quite important. I think if you analyze the game, who are the people who are doing the game, who is already lost, who you can follow you, I think, and then you build up a strategy for governance. I think that was for me a key of success.
How did you manage that? Did you invite them in restaurant or bar and try to seduce them, or what's your secret sauce?
No. People, they don't know in which category I decided them. That's very important. So, but what is important is when you're starting, you have a group and you have quick successes, and you have to communicate them, and you have to be also in a very informal way to see also when small successes, you have to communicate that they know, okay, now it's moving, now it's going on, now it's moving. Not wait and then come with a big news story. That's not enough. So people must be involved from the beginning, and I think that was very crucial.
Olve, what would be
I think it's the really important part is to have everyone pulling in the same direction, working together, and to avoid and invite everyone to the table and get them involved and get them to pay as well, because that then they feel more obligated to contribute. So avoid the ones who's only there for the free journey. Get everyone into the destination company. That's key. We have been working together with a strategy of how we will develop Trysil, and that is shared by both the private owners and the privates, and also in the municipality, and the politicians has agreed on this strategy as well. So the real success of our destination has been working together, everyone. And of course, these changes, we see that we have the small 1 person companies, and you have SkiStar, which is huge in comparison, but have everyone sitting together and discuss the common issues and the challenges that we face.
Maybe if I can add something about decisions. I think what is important also, and I had to learn that you must be patient with the decisions. You have an idea and really want to bring them directly on the table, and then you have to start. But you must be patient that you have really the peoples behind there, you have really the different associations behind there. If these decisions are not major, then wait. We wanted to purchase the restaurants in 2012. And we said, okay, now we're stopping, because that would create a political discussion, and we will not be in a political discussion. So we waited, and then in 2015, we purchased them, and everyone was agreed, okay, now you have to take over the restaurant of the mountain. But after then, once the decision is made, you have to accelerate, but accelerate very quickly, but that you can't come back to this decision. That's very important. Once a decision is made, can't come back. Very quick communication, very good for going forward and doing the decision following the first decision. I think that is very important. That is not you go one step forward, then you came back, and you have never-ending discussions. That was very important for us also to learn. First, patience, and then once decision made, accelerate.
Thanks. What are the main difficulties you did encounter, and how did you overcome them? Olve, maybe?
Let's take an example of the biking, which I know most of. It's about bringing the key stakeholders and get them to understand your idea, what you want to accomplish, and really include them as well. If you don't have these key stakeholders with you in a project, you will never be successful, I think. So what we did is that we got the municipality leaders, and we got the key stakeholders of the public companies or private companies, and we took them on a trip to see the world, to see other destinations that have done similar stuff that we have been doing. Because if you don't look at your destination from outside, you won't understand what's happening. So that has been the most successful way, and we have been copying this also in other development projects that we've been doing.
Berno, I remember having this discussion with you like 2 years ago about the vacation home owner that was very hard to include into all the decisions that you take. And I remember you explaining about a tour in different embassy with these people. Can you share that experience with the audience, please?
Yes, we have a lot of second home owners in Grenoble, and we said, okay, our marketing budget is not as big. And we said, okay, how can we make another way for marketing? And I said, okay, what could be interesting is, okay, if we integrate the second home owners in our organization. And then we asked them if they could not build an association for second home owners by own, and then say, oh, good initiative. So we started an initiative, and half a year after, they had this group. And then we said, okay, now we want to come and visit you. And so we started with the Netherlands. And we went to the Netherlands. We invited all the second home owners in Den Haag. And then they were quite surprised. What's happened now? Grenoble is coming here. And we started with a room for 30 people. We thought, okay. And then we said, okay, a lot of invitations. There were 60 people. We had to change the room, to change the building. At the end, we were 200 people. 200 people in Den Haag, second home owners and her friends and her families and so on in Den Haag. And there we only showed what we will do, the next steps in Grenoble. But this was a big marketing story at the end, so that they bring them together. We gave them also, when they bring a friend, also they had also a kind of welcome thing to Grenoble and so on. And this was a big story. The same thing we made also in Hamburg, because Hamburg we were quite good, above all at the end of the season in Eastern, and we wanted to keep the people in Eastern, and I think that was quite good. And so we started with a roadshow of second home owners roadshow. And this was quite interesting, also a kind of marketing story.
Olve, what are the projects that you still need to carry out within the governance of Trysil?
One of the main issues is like to finance projects that is beneficial for everyone. That is, it's really hard when there is not one company who can make it the money. It could be a project that would be sustainable for the whole resort, but it's not one who can take the bill. So this is a challenge for development of tourism in Norway in general, actually. How can we finance the trails? How do we do with signage? What do we do with garbage disposals and so on? Because Norway don't have tourist tax. So that is one of the key issues that we need to solve for within the next 10 years. How will we finance all these common good things that you will have on the resort?
Berno, regarding your new professional adventure at the Swiss comedy, I think it's called like that, right? How do you see the future of business model of mountain resort in Switzerland?
I think when I come back to your three models, I think
yeah, sure.
I think the model fédéré is quite important. And what is interesting, we have some examples in Switzerland. We have a lot of model fédéré now in Switzerland. Also a lot of other resorts, other areas are following us. They're coming a lot to see, okay, what were the experiences in Grächen, and they followed us as Vercorin, as Anser, and so on. They followed us. But what is interesting is an example in Lacs. In Lacs, as in the canton of Grison, there we had the first model, the concentration. But the first model is becoming now a federation model with the same owner. And I think that's quite interesting. So Rita Gurdner, who owns really the cable cars, restaurants, have hotels and so on, and now he fulfills also the tourist association services. And that's quite interesting. So also in the first model, I think you can have the attitude of federation, of fédéré. And I think this is quite important, because at the end, what we are doing in mountains, I think, is to have a good life for people who are living there, that they can live there, and with the guests they coming, that we can share our lives in this beautiful nature. I think these are the topics, and not only, okay, who is the richest and who can make more money and who can go further. I think we have a topic, a value, which is quite higher than only an economic high value, and I think this happens also in some destinations. In other bigger destinations, I can see there's not an integration model, but also a lot of federation. As taken as an example of Zermatt, which is, Matterhorn region of Zermatt, it's quite interesting how the destination functions. So you have the cable cars, you have the railway, which is important, and you have the municipality. And these three are really dominating the village, but there is none of these three entities can be really dominating. And they have rules together that the municipality or the cable cars or the railway can really dominate the situation. So they have really find rules by them, and I think this could be interesting. I think in one or another way we have this kind of model fédéré, which is the future.
So how about the future?
Sorry?
So what about the future? How do you see the future of business models in mountain resorts in Switzerland?
I think, as I told, the people can change. You have to be suffering. It's not the model who will change anything. What's interesting, I think, is also the new generation. The new generation, I think really new generation from 20, 25, 30 years, they think a little bit in another way. They're thinking in a more collaborative way, in a more sharing way. And I think these people will change much more also our business models. Otherwise, it's not interesting for them. And we need these people. I think that's important. They will change a lot for the future.
Would you say that both of you, would you say that one of the biggest challenges is in recruiting new talents and getting them to be loyal?
Yeah, I think that's I think that's the most important topic. That's a big, huge challenge. Recruiting not only leaders, new generation, but recruiting good, competent personnel and holding this personnel. I think we must go completely other ways as we did it now. Completely other ways. We have to change our attitude, to change our ways of managing personnel. Person who's working with us, but not only working for us, who's not only working with us, but living with us. And I think this is important. We have to respect them as persons who want to come into the region, who loves our region, who want to live with us, and who are the friends of us. And I think this attitude, I think we must change completely, otherwise we will have problems.
Olve, would you share that?
Yeah, because to be able to keep the good employees and the recruitment, of course, you need to work with leadership development. But first of all, it has to be like a four-season destination, so that you actually have are able to give them a full-time, full-year employment. So that is why we have to close the gap between the winter business and the summer business, because it's really hard to recruit these days. And recruit good leaders is also difficult. But you know, we have problems with everything from chefs to service providers or service personnel. The first thing is to get a full year business running, and then start working on the leadership development.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for all your insight. We have a few minutes spare, so if you guys want to ask questions, it could be in French or in English. We're going to translate. Je crois qu'il y a un micro.
I think there is a microphone for questions if people have questions.
I work for the development agency of the government to promote mountain tourism. In Chile, the business model of the ski resort are all private, and so investment is really low, and bank loans are very difficult because of the quantity of the season. We have around 1 million skiers a day in Chile. A lot of Brazilians, Argentinians, and South American guests, also Europeans and North Americans. So, how do you have some recommendations for the ski resorts to be more to the public sector invest in the resorts?
A big topic, a big question.
It's another panel.
Yeah, it's a big question. I can tell for Switzerland. Switzerland, we don't have a lot of. So the state, the government, do not engage financially in the cable cars, but they give loans. They give loans, and you have to pay them back. But that's good. That's very good. So. It's not a kind of subvention they are giving, so every franc you receive, you have to pay back. And that's quite good, because you have to be economically safe. Once you're loaning money from another, if it's from the government or from a third, you have to pay them back. If you can't pay them back, so you're not survivable. And I think that's quite important. I know that in other countries, the situation is different. That in some smaller regions and so on, smaller cable cars, they're becoming some money for investments, but not for running a company, but for some investments. When you're rebuilding a cable car and so on, they're coming. Also in Austria, in Germany, in France, some I know also for smaller, that's that they will receive. But that's another model. But bigger companies, I don't think near in Switzerland, near in Austria, near in Germany, I think all no more in French, in France, I think they don't receive money for investing in infrastructure of cable cars.
It's probably the same in Norway. It's really hard for the big companies to get some public money for investments and developments. Yeah, I think we should try to find projects that you can work together with the municipalities and as I said earlier, bring the stakeholders out into the world, see what is possible, take the politicians aside and find projects that you can work on together.
Maybe as an example, I talked about Graachen. We had 2 increases of the capital for the cable cars. We had to deal. The first was 7.6 million, and we gathered this capital from the people in the village. because the people in the village, they brought money, really a lot of money to build these cable cars. And another one was in 2016. So we gathered really new capital from over 10 million, and that was quite a lot, from private people from the region. And I think that was, for us, that was the biggest success of trust. Because when people are giving you money, not alone giving you money to invest, I think they believe in you.
On a le temps pour une dernière question, éventuellement.
Yes, hello. Berno, you mentioned that when you constituted the governments, you included people from abroad, people that weren't from Grachen, maybe from other countries. But my question is, did you get inspiration from models from other ski resorts, maybe other countries, or even other industries? And same question for Olve.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think what's interesting in tourism, you can go around and you can go abroad and you can learn. I think when we had the governance, the system we had, I think that was created by our own. So we didn't want to look, okay, what was doing other way. So we had to find our way. But when we built up the strategy, it was Serfaus Swiss Ladis. Serfaus Swiss Ladis, which is a well-known brand in Austria for family destination. It was the benchmark, I must say, the benchmark for family destination. And we went there, and we have now a good collaboration also with them, a good exchange with them. And Serfaus Swiss Ladis was for us, as a family destination, really the example how you can do it. Yes.
Yeah, we as we said, we also traveled to see what our others are doing. For us, it was bringing in the right competence for the right projects was important. Like for instance, we met with Bike Solutions here from Grenoble at this fair 10 years ago, and that was really the start of the mountain bike project that we do together. So bringing in the competence or go out and seek it for yourselves.
Well, thank you so very much for being part of this panel. I wish you a very good day and very good fair trade. And that's it. Thank you very much.
C'est bon? Ok, super. Bon, bon. Yeah.
Well, there are less people. It's getting to the end of the afternoon. I'll be telling you about a topic that I think concerns really everybody. Whether, maybe a quick question for all of you. Have you gone to the toilet today? Well, yes. Another way I could ask the question, will you go tomorrow? Well, yes, you're going to go. That's for sure. Now, it's actually unbelievable, but there's 7.9 billion inhabitants on the planet, and everybody goes to the toilet. Nobody can escape this. Now, we all have ways to behave with toilets, but everyone uses them. If everyone used as much water as what we consume in the toilets here at Alpexpo, you know the lake, Annecy Lake. The Annecy Lake would be emptied twice a month just to transport our excrement. So that's unbelievable. It would be the size of Lake Geneva every 2 years that we would be emptying through our toilets. And yet we need toilets because when you're in the mountains, you need them in the mountains, you need them in the city, wherever there are people everywhere on the planet. When you're in the mountains, in the winter, and especially women, have you had this experience that's really unpleasant of wanting to go to the toilet and not being able to go, not being able to find any, and then you had to undress in the middle of the snow or go back to the bottom of the resort and change your whole schedule for your outing with your friends because you had to use the facilities? Well, that's the world of yesterday. We have solutions. It's been 30 years that we've been working on this subject to find solutions for toilets in the mountains, but also toilets without water, the toilets of the future of humanity, so that we can all have decent toilets everywhere without depending on huge quantities of water. At Sanisphere, we worked on the topic in depth. We started with the basis 30 years ago by saying, how can we serve the public everywhere and provide toilets for all users that will be simple for the user and simple for the manager? When you install toilets, there are two problems. First of all, the problem of networks, water, electricity, sewage. A toilet with water in the mountains might freeze. This causes problems. And then the maintenance of your toilet. Once you've installed it, the resort managers find it very complicated. It's more of a problem than a solution. Obviously, a solution for the users, the skiers, but for the resort managers, they're going to have to go up to empty the toilets, etc., and that's complicated for them. So we have over 1,000 toilets installed in France and in Spain, Switzerland in particular. You can take a look at our map, and our best ambassadors are our toilets. If you enter our toilets, test them and you will approve. You can see our website with our catalog, and all of our references are available on the website, and you can go and test our products on site to decide what you think of them. So how do they work? These are eco-friendly public toilets. It's almost like magic today, where you need such large quantities of water. Remember, Lake Annecy, twice a month to flush our toilets. How can we do things differently? Well, we start with a separation here of urine and fecal matter. For about 10 years now, in the world of solid sewage, we are used to separating solid waste. We're used to separating our waste. And as animals, we separate urine from fecal matter. We decided to take inspiration from nature and to keep the same system with this separation. So how do our toilets work? Well, it's not to the detriment of user comfort. That's important for users to have the same comfort. we won't solve the problems of the 21st century if we believe that human beings are going to have to make considerable efforts. But educating people is more complicated than providing them with solutions. So we've been working on providing good solutions. Once you've separated the two, there's a lot less odor. And the flows, just like when you're doing waste management, the fact that you separate at the source, this allows you to manage these two flows separately. What is urine? Urine is fertilizer. You can say it's pollutants when it's mixed with fecal matter, but separately you can use it to fertilize the soil. So for urine in the mountains, we create a trench and we do pre-treatment, and then we infiltrate urine into the soil. And the soil has a natural treatment capacity, and it will treat these effluents, and this will nourish the soil with this matter. So you don't have to empty it. It stays on site. You're going to say, well, if we're pumping water nearby, then we have to adapt, of course. We would have a storage tank for the urine, and they would have to empty it and use it for agriculture, but further away. Now, for fecal matter, that's the most interesting. What can we do? Well, we've developed what we call earthworm composting. Some of you use earthworms for fishing. You know what it looks like. These worms have been trained, and they've learned to digest human excrement. And thanks to this, we have exceptional results. And we've had this for 30 years, where all of the material can stay on site. It's degraded and transformed into compost. Ideally, in the future, you can recycle this material. After 10, 20, 30 years in our toilets, sometimes we do get some compost. But you'll have 200,000 people who've used the toilets over 15 years, and with 200,000 people who've used it, you'll just collect one little bag of compost, so it's not much. So you can actually leave it on site, and you don't need to empty it. So that's the flagship concept. We also have a natural ventilation system with a depressurized space, and this avoids odors. So in the actual toilet, you don't have any odors. Even when you go right after someone else who's left some odors, it's not always so pleasant. In our toilets, it's never the case, and that's quite magic. And people thank us for this. Because we have no water, it's much easier to wash the toilets. And washing is the last obstacle that we still have for ski resort managers, mountain shelters, local municipalities to install public toilets. So, at Sanisphere, we have 30 years of experience in terms of producing public toilets and installing them and maintaining them. But the last obstacle is servicing or regular maintenance. And I have a dream. I'd like to dream with you. As citizens, do we want to not have toilets because we can't service them, we can't wash them, because it's too expensive or too complicated to send someone up in a helicopter just to clean the toilets? That's nonsense. So what can we do to ensure that as committed citizens, we ourselves could clean these toilets, or at least give the information when the toilets are dirty so that people can come and clean them? So this is the problem that we're implementing today at Sanisphere, to move away from a product economy where we produce public toilets, install them, and do maintenance, towards a business model of service where we're going to be there to serve the public, of course, but also to serve the citizen and the user and engage citizens so that they can give us user feedback. What will this look like? It will be a QR code in our toilets, and when you use our toilets next year, you'll have a little QR code to scan and tell us whether the experience was pleasant or unpleasant. And we will learn thanks to your feedback, and then we'll go further. We'll say, okay, you've sent us feedback, that's great, the toilets were dirty, okay, can you clean them? You're going to say, no, we're not going to work for you. Each person has their job. It's your job to give us good toilets. You won't do it. But if I propose to you tomorrow to win a car if you take the time to clean the toilet, how many of you would maybe do that? Or just if we encourage you to be a committed citizen. So we are going to work on the motivation factors, human motivation factors, which will allow citizens to commit tomorrow and reduce costs for public authorities and we as citizens who pay our taxes, and make it possible to have more toilets everywhere in our cities where we need them the most, mountains and resorts. And so here they are in some photos. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, I'm available. Any questions? Any urgent desires? We need a mic or we can't translate the question. What altitude? Well, it depends on what latitude you're at. The altitude. In the Alps, for example. Well, in the Alps, this composting with worms works up to 3,002. They work quite well. 3,200 meters. We also have on Mont Blanc at 4,400, but we don't do composting with worms up there at 4,400 meters. If we have we need 4 or 5 months of thawing during the year, and then we adapt the dimensioning of our systems with respect to the time and the number of visits, the quantity of material, and the working time of the worms. But yes, up to 3,200 meters, there are no problems. Any other questions? Have any of you already tested our toilets? You've used them? Can you tell us about your experience? I agree with the fact that there's no odor, and that's quite impressive. It was quite practical, quite practical. It really saved my life. Well, that's why we're here. With 1,000 public toilets in France, we have about 5% of the total stock of public toilets that are installed. And we estimate that there are 1 out of every 4 French citizens, and mostly people who have spent time in the mountains, who've actually used our toilets. So don't hesitate. You saw the map of France. If you want to test our toilets, they're probably near you. There are some in Grenoble. You can find it on the website, and you can test our toilets. Don't hesitate to try them out and do some lobbying with public decision makers, because it's thanks to the desire of the public that politicians make decisions in terms of public service. And we're here to support them in making the right choices also. If you have any other questions, come and visit our stand. And we have a toilet that you can see. It's a wooden toilet, and we can answer your questions personally. We won't enclose you in the toilets, lock you in, don't worry. But if you have any other questions, come and see us at our stand. Okay, thank you very much.
ben c'est parti. Donc désolé pour le retard.
Okay. There were some technical problems and we're starting a bit late, but my name is Alison. I'm in charge of the On-Piste department at the Rossignol Group. In the next 10 minutes, I'll be presenting On-Piste, which is our outdoor app designed with the territories and for athletes. Now, On-Piste is the only existing solution on the market of this type when you want to respond to the needs of the territories and athletes. When we're talking about active holidays, active for athletes, but also respectful of local resources. So some of you may be surprised and say, well, I didn't expect to see Rossignol talking about this, but indeed, it is the ski manufacturer that you know, Rossignol, and for several years the group has been manufacturing mountain bikes, hiking equipment, trekking equipment, and beyond the diversification, the four-season diversification of our activities through the department that I represent, On-Piste, they've been supporting ski resorts and local authorities in the development and promotion of their sports destinations. So, to start, let's put ourselves in the shoes of an active athlete. For example, Justine, who wants to organize her weekend sports activities. She's going to be doing trail running and mountain biking, and she wants to discover a new destination that she doesn't know. So before she goes to the location, she's going to have to prepare her stay. So she'll spend several hours navigating from one website to another, going to social networks to choose her destination, and then to choose her journey. There are many different platforms that exist, and I won't list them all, to choose her trail, but she'll choose a trail proposed maybe by another athlete in the community, and once she's done that, then she has to go to another website to reserve her accommodation, another to rent her mountain bike. So she'll spend 2, 3, or 4 hours just organizing her sports outing. And yet, despite all that time that she spent preparing, once she's on site, things don't go the way she expected. She gets lost because the trail she was following doesn't correspond to the reality in the field. Maybe, meanwhile, there was something that was reorganized in the trails, and maybe the official trail isn't marked, and she can't trust the signposting. So then when she continues her trail, it takes her to sections where she feels unsafe because the trail hasn't been maintained, hasn't been cleaned, or also because it's too difficult with respect to her technical level. And then following her trail, she ends up in a field, but when she's present, there's a shepherd and his herd, and the encounter was not very positive. So she realizes that she was in a protected area and she's deteriorating the flora. The baby flowers. And so now she's finished her outing, and I've experienced this myself. She just wants to go to a bar and have a drink, a soft drink, and she's disappointed. Everything's closed. So I think this story resonates with some of you. Thank you, Reg, who is the comic strip artist and who did these fabulous images. So these are some of the other images to accompany my story. So what we realize in conclusion is that unfortunately in this situation nobody's really satisfied. Justine is disappointed. The people that she meets are not very happy to see her either. So when you start to focus on the needs of these different stakeholders and different people using the destination, we realize that there are reasons for these types of friction emerging if the situation isn't under control and well organized. So concretely, rapidly if we put ourselves in the place of the shepherd, the fauna, the flora. The shepherd works in the destination. He represents the local actors working in the territory. So they just want peace of mind, and they want to be left alone. And they want their flowers to grow, and they want to be able to carry out their professional activity. If you take the example of the restaurant owner and all of the socio-professional players linked with tourism, they want to be able to sell their service, their product, to a maximum number of tourists, and if possible, all year round. If you look at Justine and her friend, who represent active tourists who are coming from time to this destination for their leisure activities, they want to have a fluid experience from start to end. When they arrive, they don't want to get lost. They want their trail to be adapted to their level, and there are no surprises on site. And then when they go to the restaurant or to the shops to rent their bikes, it should be open, and the service offered is adapted to their needs. So the idea is to satisfy all of these users while respecting the environment within the budget that is allotted for this. And so the Rossignol Group, once we made this observation, we believe that every actor has legitimate expectations. The shepherd, it shouldn't be at war with the tourist or vice versa. Everyone should be able to benefit from nature in the positive sense. And so we wanted to act. And with En Piste, this is our response to try to reconcile the different users. So concretely, our mission is to provide concrete solutions to ensure the proper cohabitation between users in the territory to guarantee qualitative, sustainable, and peaceful development of outdoor activities. So that was just to present the context, a quick diagnosis of the situation. And the idea is to say, who is En Piste? Today, we are a department of the Rossignol Group, and for 10 years now, the brand En Piste is more recent, linked to brand evolutions that you're all familiar with. You may have heard us under the brand Station Trail, but we work with local authorities and mountain resorts for the past 10 years, and we support them in the organization, development, and promotion of their sports destination. As I said, we're quite present with our network with trail running stations, but we're also present with Nordic walking, all types of cycling, whether it's mountain biking, cyclotourism, and also backcountry skiing. So we represent 200 destinations, mainly in France, that have the label of sports destinations. So what will you find in an En Piste destination? Well, we've helped them to get organized to welcome in a qualitative way active tourists throughout the year. You don't have to be a super pro trail runner or mountain biker, but these are people who like to travel and discover destinations actively. And so we want to support them so that this activity can also be a real vector of development for the territory. So with signposting, signs that are maintained and distinct for the different sports, for different levels, which will allow tourists to know where to go, but also where not to go, to leave the different local professionals alone so that they're not in contact with the tourists if they don't want to be. And then a selection of service providers. We see the restaurant owner here, and we've prepared all of these service providers to properly welcome this targeted clientele. And we've entered that into the En Piste website and the app. And these are free tools. Now, how does En Piste reconcile the expectations of the different players? And what can En Piste contribute with respect to the other existing platforms? I'm sorry, I'm using two screens here. Well, we have three specificities. The first is that all of the information and the trails on our tools have been verified by our team on site. And this is the fruit of consultation with all of the local actors. So we have official trails. You don't see the traces of John Doe or just anybody, because some of these trails are not very qualitative. Here are the photos that show how we work on the trails. And what is the advantage of this? Well, it benefits the territory, which has 100% control of the information that's disseminated on piste, and that way they can develop sports tourism while protecting the natural heritage and ensuring a good cohabitation of different users. But it's also beneficial for the athletes themselves because they feel safe. These are well signposted trails adapted to their level, and they feel that they're protecting their playground as well, and they can understand that. You can't just go anywhere in a territory. You have to follow officially marked trails. The other specific feature that differentiates us is that we're not just a catalog of trails. We go beyond this because we add all of the different components, the accommodations, restaurants, as I said. And again, this is a benefit for the local territories and for the athletes. For the territories, they can transform these athletes who might seem to be a bit volatile in the destination into real customers of the destination, and this can generate an economic impact. For the athletes, it's really practical because on a single website or an app, they have everything. They have the trails, accommodations, instructors, and this helps them prepare their stay. And the third specific feature is that we really believe in the network effect. Collectively, we are stronger. So we work with the local authorities, but we also connect the public and private players. So it's the Rossignol group that is working with the destinations, so a private actor working with public destinations. And this leads to a lot of innovation. Working in a network allows them to reach a much broader audience of athletes, and it would cost a lot of money. So if we pool all of our communication actions, this can be a win-win solution. We're joining the on-piste family, and we can make proposals. So we do provide a lot of innovation. And the athletes find a lot of benefits because one platform with a lot of high-quality destinations on the same platform is very practical when you're preparing your next sports outing or stay. So I propose, of course, we have some time for questions, but come and visit us on our stand, which is actually corridor or alley 8, stand 708. We're there until tomorrow. But don't hesitate to download the app, and you'll be able to go to the great new spots this weekend already. We'll see if you have any questions. Are there any questions? Otherwise, I put you to sleep. Oh, I see a super question in the back. We need a mic. Hello? I'd like to know, what is your model for the app? How do you succeed in having more trails every year? Well, our economic business model, you mean? Well, it's a service that we sell to the destinations. Have you understood? We're not here just to collect the trails. We actually go, I have a team of 5 people. It's engineering. We have our communication manager who's here with us. And we work with the destinations directly. We identify the trails with them, and then that's why our network is growing. We've been working with 60 destinations now. We're working with 60 destinations. Other questions? I love having questions. Great. Here's another one. But you have to use the mic, sir. What about walking destinations? Nordic walking. There are only about 10 options. Why aren't there more? Nordic walking, or just walking or hiking? Well, in our history, we really developed in sports where we had a lot of expertise and a lot of added value. That's why we positioned ourselves in trail running, Nordic walking, mountain biking. On-piste does allow the destinations beyond these sports to also add horse riding, trails, other types of trails. So our communication is targeted mainly on those athletes, trail runners, mountain bikers. If you want to talk to everyone, sometimes you speak to no one. So we want to be experts. We are experts in these sports. We have communities that are quite large who follow us. But we could also add more hiking trails, normal hiking trails as well.
Ah, si, il y a une question.
Bonjour.
Hello. So with respect to ski touring trails, what kind of resources do you have in the resorts and sites where you are in order to prepare your paths? Well, it really depends on the destinations. In our ski touring spaces, we've got different activities, but we always work with local people, with ski lift operators, ski patrol people, and of course the town hall. It's the mayor who is responsible for subjects like this from a legal point of view. And we have other destinations where there were no longer any cable cars. So we work with the ComCom. So the example of ski touring is an example of real innovation. The first ski touring space created was in 2012. Everybody's talking about that now. Now, unfortunately, with what happened, COVID, it was a great solution for ski resorts while waiting for the ski lifts to open again. But in fact, we've been working on this topic since 2012. So we want to continue to develop that sport, which is advantageous.
Comment vous mettez en avant le...
How do you work with the professionals? Well, it would have been good to do a demonstration of the site. It's Agora Calise who hosts our site. But unfortunately, there was a cyber attack last night. And so our site's working, but it's very slow. So go and have a look at the site. But when you go to the destination, so we've emphasized the destination, the different courses, different types of accommodation, linked with sports available in the destination. That's how it works. So you've got the trails, but you've got everything else. And that's how we focus on different things as instructors for ski touring, people that can help you with trails, etc.
On arrête. Bah, du coup, ça y est, c'est fini, notre temps de parole est fini.
Okay, so I've run out of time. Thank you very much for listening. And as I said, we're present on the stand. It's booth 708 in Alley 7. So please come and see us and we'll be delighted to answer any questions that you may have.
Ça a commencé. 1, 2. Eh bien...
Well, hello everybody. Thank you for coming today. We're going to present to you an activity that is nascent in the mountain world. We're not actually going to fly it, so don't worry. Benjamin and myself, we're going to explain to you what's happening in mountain areas with respect to the use of UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. Benjamin Blanc, I'm the general manager for Belleville. It's in charge of Val Thorens, Les Menuires and Saint-Martin ski resorts. We're going to explain to you our marriage. We got married, Antoine and myself. We haven't consummated the wedding yet, but anyway, the project was born from skills that we took on in our company. It's a project that we refer to as diversification. It's a project we've been working on for 5 years, and we're trying to get skills in-house for our everyday activities. And I'm looking at Olivier Gardet. Olivier is a skill that we have. He's an UAV pilot. So we provided this technology. It allows us to do lots of different things, and that's what we're going to be presenting. So my name is Antoine. I've just learned that we got married this morning, or that we're getting married. But anyway, I'm General Director for Patrol Air. It's a young company that was created by Thierry, who's there on the first row. He's a former pilot and instructor for airplanes. I come from the helicopter world. That's important for what's coming next. You'll understand then why we decided to join up as associates for the Belleville Valley. Now, in Belleville, we're in charge of safety in this vast area. And here I'd like to pay tribute to the mayor who is with us, Claude G. It's the biggest ski area in the world, and we have to be proud of that, because it's in France and it's in the Belleville Valley. So this area that we're responsible for when it comes to safety is huge. Given my job, it's important for us to have a camera with propellers to send it to see what's happening so that we can take the right decisions in our everyday activity. So, given this experience inside our company, we've been able to discover that it was a great tool in our job when it comes to safety. Like all good mountain dwellers, it has to work. So we're going to continue to use this UAV, and we realize that there's also regulations with this UAV. And the regulations are, in fact, quite strict. And who better than somebody from aviation can help us with procedures and processes? So that's why we turned towards Patrol Air, because they have so much experience in the aviation field. They could help us and coordinate things. So you can imagine how proud we were to be called by this wonderful ski area. Now, Benjamin said this: a UAV must only be used according to rules. So a UAV, it's a drone a product that appeared on the market not long ago. It was born for gaming and flying model aeroplanes, which is good and not good. It meant that it could get onto the market very quickly, and it was something that could do great things. It could film from the sky. In fact, most of the pictures, most of the films that we see, aerial films, are filmed by UAVs, which is all well and good, but UAVs have to be considered as a flying machine, just like an aeroplane or a helicopter, which means that the flying space has to be shared, and that means rules. So Thierry and myself, who created Patrol Air, we're not specialists. We're not even mountain dwellers, even if we love the mountains. So we've spent a lot of time in the aviation sector, and it's the rigor, the discipline of the aviation sector that we apply to the UAV. So like all of you, if you're mountain dwellers, you're enthusiasts of your area, and we are enthusiasts in our field, in the aviation field. We can't really give you any lessons in terms of discipline, because in our hands we have human lives. In our hands we have That's what you have in ski areas, generally speaking. Unfortunately, there are problems. Accidents happen. You have to save people. In our helicopters, we carried people. Now UAVs are going to fly over rescue areas and take part in the rescue. Now, our initial idea was to apply this discipline to the world of UAVs. So we set ourselves up as a training center for aviation purposes, not just to teach people to be pilots, but to help them with their missions, with their jobs in mountain areas. So I don't want to act as a philosopher, but the ambition of the Belleville Valley is to provide a resort where it's lovely to go, but where it's lovely to live in a house, to be trained, to do everything that one might want to do. So that's why we focused on developing UAVs. It was part of the diversification of our company. So we wanted to offer the first center, the first school for mountain UAVs. And mountain UAVs is a specific thing. We're used to using helicopters in rescue assignments. We will continue to use helicopters to provide rescue services, but the UAV will be added to our rescue missions. And between and in the summer period, which hopefully will become a full season in our business, in the summer we're going to be using the UAV, this internal skill, to set up the first school, the first training center for UAV use in the Alps. So this is how, as Benjamin explained, this is how we created the center in the Belleville Valley. The first result was that we wanted to go even further. So that's why we got married and why we decided to found this first UAV school for mountain applications, whatever the application. So we're realizing that it's not just for the winter season. We can imagine other applications in the summer, for example. So having pooled our skills, the skills from the Belleville Valley, which no longer have to be proven, and our skills, because we do have some experience in aviation. I think we've spent together more than 60 years in the aviation sector. So we want to provide our aviation skills, our relational skills, to make sure that operations are carried out according to expectations and in a safe environment. The worst thing is having a collision between a UAV and another flying machine. I can't imagine what the consequences of that would be. So this collaboration is going to be a lasting collaboration. It's not just about creating something and then each person works on their own side of the fence. We're going to stay together. We're going to learn what's happening in the mountain world, and we're going to follow regulatory changes and make sure that the school is up to scratch. So there we are, 9 minutes to present what we decided to do together. Now we will be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And thank you for listening to us with such a high level of attention. So you've understood everything then. That means that we were very clear. So no questions. Well, thank you very much for your attention. And see you soon in Belleville.
Bonjour.
So hello, I'm going to present to you 3 tools for decision making for climatic services. It's interesting to see this together because it's an example that's fairly emblematic of the meeting between 2 separate worlds, research on one side, scientific research, and the world of mountains on the other. So there are some interesting meeting points. So I'm going to be talking about 3 services: Klimsnow, ProSnow and TipSnow. Perhaps you're already familiar with some of these. So they've been developed by a series of partners. They are listed on the left-hand side of the screen. Personally, I work between Meta France and the Design and Research Office, and there are other partners who work with us. So I'm going to talk to you about an old request, a research on the one hand, and I'm also a ski instructor, and the snow world on the other side of the screen. So with these 3 tools, we can really make the link. So you take what research is able to do, and you can use that to produce tools for resorts. And then, so you can anticipate weather conditions, snow conditions, climate conditions, in order to make the right kind of choices so that you can manage your ski resort properly. So let me give you a typical example. It's the 1st of December. The resort's about to open in 2 weeks' time. So the question is, do we manufacture artificial snow? So it's important to anticipate snow conditions, weather conditions, and then tell the resort whether it has to manufacture snow or not. Or you can think about in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, 40 years' time, so that long-term decisions can be made whether to install a new chairlift, for example. There's no point doing that if there's going to be no snow in 30 years' time. So we use the state-of-the-art in research to deploy models so that we can think about what's going to happen in the long term, in 30 years' time, for example. So let's start with Klimsnow. This helps resorts to adapt to climate change. So there are over 100 resorts that have already started using this tool all over France, and we're starting to sell it abroad. The idea is to see for each part of a run, depending on, it doesn't matter what kind of snow there is, so we can look at different climate scenarios. How many skiing days will be possible in, for example, 20 years' time? So this is the example of a resort that we studied recently. It's Les Deux Alpes, and it authorized us to show its results. So you see a lovely map, and at 2050, you can see what's happening. So if it's red, it's less than 30 days of skiing, but it's green, it's over 110 days of skiing. And it depends on many things. It depends on the altitude, it depends on adaptations, it depends on slopes, on gradients, whether there is any artificial snow. There are some slopes that are green, it's because they have a lot of snow and some artificial snow. There are some areas that are groomed, others that are not. So lots of numerical models are used to help the resort to anticipate. With maps like this, choices can be made, decisions can be made. So if we add artificial snow here, for example, in 20, 30 years' time, it'll be possible to continue skiing here. In terms of artificial snow, I'm only going to be able to have 3 months of that because of the temperatures. So either you reinforce or you tell the resort maybe to start thinking about closing the chairlifts there. And also it depends on exposure and other factors. So these are things that can be used for development schemes. If there's a project, for example, and you need to know whether the slope is going to have enough snow or not, well, you can use this kind of tool. So the resort manager, the municipal team, they can use this tool for long-term decisions. Now, let's look at the short term. A few weeks, a few days. We have another tool. It's called ProSnow, and it helps with everyday decisions. It helps to prepare the artificial snow, so it's something that deciders can use. So technicians, people in charge of artificial snow, and they know what they have to do in the next few days or the next few weeks. So this is an example of what the software produces. There's an awful lot of information. You have to be trained to use this kind of system. On the left, you've got curves that tell you what's going to happen next, whether this is temperature, height of snow, artificial snow. So the model gives us dates as well, so we know whether we can keep us run open or not. So you've got different maps, and it's the same place, but with 10 days between. So this is a real photo of snow observed, and this is the model zone per zone, according to the data that tells us, be careful, in 10 days' time there will be less snow, more snow. So that's for the day-to-day management of the resort and the snow. Let's continue. So we've got a third tool. It's a recent tool. It was developed over the past few weeks thanks to the help of Les Arcs that financed it. It wants to use the tool exclusively this year. And there are 3 partners as well. So CJX, Météo France, and another partner. So the idea is to answer a fairly important question. Have we got enough snow with respect to what we've observed? We all know that there are onboard systems that tell us how much snow there is on the machines. That's just half of the information. No, you can measure 2 meters today on a run, but is that going to be enough? Well, it's not easy to answer that question. Perhaps we'd need 3 meters as long as if we want to reach the objective that we have. So the tip snow system compares the observation of snow height with the modelling of an objective, and it says if we're on the right track or not with respect to the objective. So here you can see a map of part of Les Arcs this year. In blue we've got zones. When it's blue, it means that we've measured the previous year snow that is above the objective for each place and each date. When it's red, it means that we don't have enough snow and we're not sure to be able to stick to the objective. It might be the end of the season, the objective, or the start of the season. So how do we have this kind of magic result? Well, we look at 30 past seasons for each place, and we ask what was the minimum snow necessary for each date to face the worst scenario. So when you've got green, we know that even in the worst scenario, we can keep things going because there's enough snow. So all of this, of course, is being tested. It's being developed in Les Arcs and will be available for other resorts next year. Now, just to summarize the 3 tools then. ClimSnow for climate change, long-term projections for big investment choices. ProSnow, detailed forecast for day-to-day management. TipSnow, the 2.0 version of current software for measuring snow. It's not just about observation, it's about comparing and reaching that objective. So all 3 instruments are promoted by the consortium, which is a mixture between research and the world of mountain areas, and that's an advantage for both sides because for the research, it means that the researchers are no longer in the ivory tower. They're offering things that are concrete for ski resorts. Ski resorts also have access to state-of-the-art tools from the research world. So the 3 tools are continuously being developed because we want to have the most updated, most precise model possible for research. If you have any questions, you can ask them. Otherwise, you can go and see us at booth 739. Otherwise, you can look at our website. There are websites for each product. Just enter the name of the product and you'll find out more information about how it works. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Parfait, très bien.
Perfect then. So just to finish with a sentence, normally what we do in research is difficult to apply directly to everyday life. And it's not the most interesting thing. There's a Nobel Prize in physics who once said that science and sex, it's the same thing. You can have practical consequences, but that's not why we do it. It's for other nicer reasons. So, you know, I think we've got the interesting research side, the entertaining side of things here, but also the very concrete aspect. We're very happy that what we're doing is useful for resorts. So it's a dual pleasure that we're experiencing. Thank you.
Ça marche? C'est bon? Bon, bah excusez-moi, j'ai cru qu'il y avait du retard et voilà. Alors je vais vous parler des stations connectées dans les Alpes et ailleurs d'ailleurs. Nous sommes une agence d'architecture qui s'appelle Actis, qui est basée à Grenoble de 26 personnes, avec la particularité d'être architecte, urbaniste et paysagiste. Et on travaille sur beaucoup de stations en montagne, avec une approche différente, qui est une approche sur la rénovation des stations. Et donc la rénovation des stations, c'est surtout comment dire, une approche globale. Nos stations ont vieilli, on le voit ici. On est,
So our resorts are growing older. It was in the end of the 70s, the 80s. So there was a need to have a comprehensive approach to traffic. People didn't want to see big car parks in resorts, etc. Comfort, diversity of the supply. So we needed to redesign our resorts, to reinvent them. We had a message, a simple method. We wanted to take stock of the situation for the people taking decisions in the municipalities. And we worked on scenarios that we proposed to decision makers so that they could rethink about their resort and update the resort and make. And our method consisted in working on 4 pillars in the resort. We'll see this with some examples. So mobility, which is the most important pillar, access to resorts. That's the combat that you have in a resort, you know. You don't want to experience lots of traffic jams while you're getting up to the resort. So it's important to develop transport so that access to resorts is made easier. So you need to have soft mobility modes as well, vehicle-free modes. People don't want to move around in resorts in their cars. And so it was important to look at traffic routes. So the second pillar was energy, and we'll see this. The third, use, and the fourth, nature. Why? Because we're in mountain areas. We're right in the heart of mountain areas, and this is what people want. So let me give you an example. Let me just illustrate what I'm saying with the example of Champs-Rousse. We've been working with Champs-Rousse. Champs-Rousse had a mobility issue. It's based on 3 sites, and if you can't control your mobility between 3 sites, obviously you can have shuttles, etc. So we worked on cable links between the different sites of Roche-Béranger, Recoing, etc. So with traffic plans inside the project, so that it would be easier for people to park, so that people could access the parking areas, so that people could spend their time without being invaded by cars. So then the next question is resort accessibility. Hopefully this will be important one day. We're going to have a link between Alpexpo, the former Olympic station, and Champs-Rousse. This is a wish that doesn't just concern Champs-Rousse, it also concerns the inhabitants, all of the people who live and work on the 2 plateaus below Champs-Rousse. So there's the Herbé plateau and the Champagné-Uriage plateau, Volnavet, that plateau. So the question of energy, this is the third point, or the second point. It's fundamental because we're talking about an obligation for everybody to work on projects that are virtuous, don't use too much energy, and focus on renewable energy. I'm a bit surprised that in this trade fair, the question of the environment and the planet is not really emphasized. It seems so important when you think about mountain resorts. It's something that really needs to be emphasized more. In our project, we're working on solutions that are even more respectful of the environment because we're already in a natural environment that is really sensitive and very precious for all of us. So in Champs-Rousse, we're going to set up the first smart lead for mountain resorts, and we've set up a project with our design office which is based on 100% renewable energies, biomass, heat recovery. So we've got a big photovoltaic station. There's a lot of sun in the resort, even though there might be a lot of snow. And another subject that's important is renovating what already exists, and doing this thanks to these 70s buildings based on fuel boilers. So we're going to connect these existing buildings to a heat network. So that means removing the carbon from all of that at the same time and improving the carbon footprint of the resort. So we're seeing the details of the project here. So that's the energy mix, just to show that, you know, it's 100% renewable, this project. Now the third pillar concerns uses and the fact that today everybody knows nobody goes up to mountains anymore to ski for 6 hours every day. Our clientele doesn't always ski, in fact. In a group, you've got people who ski, some other people who do other things, and the question of use and the diversity of uses is therefore fundamental. And so it's very important to diversify the offer in the resort. Champs-Rousse is a typical example where obviously you've got diversification of snow recreation with sledging runs, Nordic skiing, snow scooters, but the offer in the resort, well, it's getting smaller with the swimming pool that's been closed. So that's why the project is offering to re-diversify the offer with a huge balneotherapy center, with a multimedia center, a co-working center, a whole lot of things that are being offered. The Beldon halls, restaurants. It's a complete renewal that we're seeing. It's so that the offer is highly attractive, and it's an urban planning subject. You know, we work on these projects to integrate this diversification in the heart of the resort. So here we've reworked Le Recoin, which is the heart of the resort. And then there's the connected question. This is being developed more or less well, depending on the resort. It's the question of apps, resort apps. The smartphone has become a kind of an extension of the human being, and so it's important to be able to coordinate activities, your life, your leisure activities. So that's a big challenge. You know, making sure that the offer of the resort is available on your smartphone. But that smartphone can have virtues as well. It can provide indicators, and at the end of the day, calculate the carbon footprint of each individual according to their activities. And this comes back to the last pillar, nature. You know, it's the question of the role of nature, the place of nature, the impression of a natural surroundings that you have in a resort. In the 60s and 70s and 80s, things were built. So at the time, it was like transporting the city to the mountains. But that's not what we want today. We want to have more nature in cities, and we don't want cities in our mountain areas. So we're working on our relationship with nature. And there's a constant characteristic that we're seeing in all resorts. Because there is snow, these public space is not treated properly in resorts. So it's important to look at landscaping resorts. They're just as important as city centres. Now, there might be some exceptions. There are not very many trees in Val Thorens, for example, but we're working on that. But it is important to work on the landscape. It's important to have an extraordinary landscape with water, like you have in Champs-Rousse. So even if it's difficult, it is possible to transform certain hill reservoirs as summer beaches. Why not? there is potential, huge potential at Champs-Rousse. There's the Lake Achard and Lake Robert at an altitude of 2,000. So the example of this project, so that's the characteristic resort of the 70s. We can look at the current state. Things have been demolished, so it's even worse today. So we're just looking at concrete, bitumen, roads. The idea is to move from that universe with bitumen and roads cut off from the alpine areas to a quality-focused universe and we're also removing the permeability from resorts. We're greening the resort. We're making sure that there is more green, there are more trees and more water. We're going to set up a water circuit in the resort so that the summer use and even the interseasonal use is of much better quality. If you go outside of the season into these resorts, it's very depressing. It's just a lot of concrete. So when renovating these resorts, we're going to focus on things better and do what we do in cities in our mountain resorts. So that's the current situation. That's the future situation. Everything is pedestrian. There's direct communication between the heart of the resort and the alpine areas. This is a view from the slopes where it will be possible to go back down to the heart of the station on your skis. There'll be a pedestrian circuit so that you can go around the shops and things, and then there's a belvedere in the center, a lookout point that allows you to see the whole valley. Perhaps one day, in the background, there's a hypothetical cable car station for a cable car taking people to Grenoble. Val Thorens now, it's a different scale, but it's the same approach. So we won a competition organized by Belleville and La Sasse. The idea was to rebuild an environmentally friendly district between parking P3 and the ice stadium. So today there's an awful lot of concrete, a lot of tarmac. So there's the Piclet torrent here that we can see that comes from the top. It's just not, the value of it is not emphasized. This makes you think about Champs-Rousse. We've just got roads and car parks, and it's the entrance to Val Thorens. So the challenge is to change the image, to change the way this entrance looks. And so we're re-greening Val Thorens. We're removing the permeability from the pavements and roads. We're working on the buildings. We want to see the torrent in the middle. We want to see nature and greenery, even at 2,300 meters in altitude. And it's possible with a new snowfront, with public, top-quality public spaces. Obviously, we know what we're talking about when we see Val Thorens and that the risk of flooding. We look at all of the uses, the 4 pillars: mobility, use, nature, and energy. So all of the skiing circuits, the travel plan, we've buried all of the cars in this plan. So below the central complex there are 1,800 car parking spots that are invisible because we've worked on the relief. So we've worked on the agora, on what we have under the buildings. So you can see how you can move from something that's very impermeable and based on tarmac and concrete to something that's much greener. Even if you still have the buildings, you could also work on the energy issue. So it's the same thing here. At Val Thorens, you've got turbines that turbine the torrent. We're going to have biomass stations that are used for the whole sector. We're going to make sure that there's a lot of photovoltaic technology used on all of the buildings. So the idea in Val Thorens, it's very cold. So it would be good to have kind of greenhouses in front of the balconies. So use the balconies for photovoltaic systems and produce electricity and protect against overheating as well, thanks to this production of energy. So we can see this. We always think in terms of this global approach: energy, mobility, use, and nature. Last example here is the example of Trysil. It's a very small resort where at the end of the day, at the bottom of the screen, there's a cable car with a big car park with a chairlift. The idea was to recreate a real snowfront. We're in fields, we're separate from the village by Arlie. We've got some lovely meandering. It's a landscaping project. The idea is to have these meanders continue in the project, to hide car parks as far as possible, to orientate buildings so that they have the best views. And, it's all about thinking landscape. It's about recreating a landscape which hopefully, and you'll see this on the last slides, gives the impression that the project has always existed. So it's a kind of a funnel from these slopes, and we start with a situation where we've got lots of car parks, and the idea is that our resorts in the Alps, don't have this big car park where people park up and then go and ski. The idea, that was the idea in the past. The idea is that this car park is reduced because you've now got car parks below the buildings. So you've got something that's much more landscaped with a snow front with terraces, restaurants, cafes, that can invite the public in. And in Arlie, there's a huge difference between this current picture and the project that we've put forward. So for the previous two projects, we won, but the other two we lost. Hopefully the project will be good. I'm not familiar with the other project. So we've got the same view here because, we've got drone views. So this is the existing situation, thanks to the drone. So we've thought about these projects so that, we have the impression that that's always been the way it is. So that was what we've worked on right from the start. We'll see whether the project works. If it doesn't, make the site become less natural or of a lower value. So that's the winter atmosphere. Just to think about the difference with the big car park. And these are the atmospheres that can be created in the summer. So it is really time, that's why I'm saying this, it's really time that urban planners, that landscape planners, along with architects, and sometimes we do both jobs, work in resorts at global level, and not so that they don't just, think about extensions here and there. They need to have a global vision. It's all about reinventing our resorts and making sure that these resorts become eco-resorts, environmentally friendly resorts. So the main points that are important to remember when you're making this kind of transformation, I think that the theme of the trade fair itself, Mountain Planet, the theme is transition. It is a very topical issue. So the key success factors for us have this global vision, and I didn't say this, but it's also about having support from the local authorities. That's very important, especially given the current context. It's difficult. Today, there's a general slowing down when it comes to projects and their emergence. We're not doing things in the same way. There are many more points of contact. It's much more complicated, very, very complicated to get projects off the ground, to have a mandate. Sometimes you need more than just one mandate, in fact. And it's also important to federate partners, industrial partners, private partners, entrepreneurial partners around projects so that they can be successful. There we are. So I've kept to my 1/4 of an hour. I think maybe I've got over it slightly, but if you have any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them. I've tried to summarize in 1/4 of an hour my work, which is a little bit complicated. So we're working on other resorts. If you have any questions, then please feel free to ask them. If everybody's tired, because it's very hot in here. Don't know whether you have a microphone, a roving mic, maybe? There it is, the roving mic. Hello. Hello. I have a question about what you were saying. You were talking about urban planners and landscape planners. In Lyon, we have a district, Confluence it's called, that emerged a few years ago. There's an awful lot of concrete. There's very little space that has been made for some kind of natural imagination, and it's, it dates back 10 years now, if not more. Yes, it's more. So is it new for you to work like this, or has it been in your DNA for a long time? Because, people who are taking decisions, do they think green straight away? I think there's a strong trend, yes, and I have to be frank. So 10 years ago, I'm an architect and an urban planner. I work in the private sector, in the public sector. There were no landscape planners in the past when I took over my agency 7.5 years ago. But I felt that it was absolutely essential. In other words, it worked so well that today I think we've got 3 landscape people, and they work just as much on our architectural projects, on our permits, because there's always a context for each project. And increasingly, people are asking for landscape. We can't build in the way we built 30 years ago, where we just thought concrete. It's no longer presentable. In cities, we have to integrate the landscape with respect to mentalities and climate change. It's absolutely essential. It's vital, in fact. We need trees. We need to eat up the carbon. We need to protect ourselves from overheating. It's absolutely vital. And what I've noticed is, I don't know very many landscape people who work in ski resorts. It seems to be a subject that's just ignored. Now, of course, it's complicated to remove snow and what have you when you have a difficult landscape. But, if people who make equipment, maybe they need to change because, snow plows are bigger and bigger in Italy. There are very small snow plows that can go down pedestrian streets and they work very well. So let's stop wanting to make things bigger and bigger. Let's, go back to quality and landscapes that we know how to do in certain cities. It seems absolutely essential for resorts if we want to extend the season as well. With global warming, for example, it's going to be a request. We can't have people coming up to resorts in the summer where you just add flower pots everywhere to make the resort seem pretty. We need to think about resorts in the same way that we think about public spaces in cities. So you were talking about Confluence. Yes, we can criticize the fact that maybe there wasn't enough landscaping in that project. And yet, you've got the river, the rivers, the road, and the Saône. On the Saône side, it is a little bit more landscaped, I have to say. There we go. So if you have any questions, or if there are no more questions, thank you very much for the questions that you have asked.